Juan Manuel Fangio, 5 world championships, 1951 to 1957. Here's what the record says. 5 titles with 4 different constructors, a win rate of 46.15%, a number that no driver in the history of the sport has come close to matching. Fangio didn't just win races, he dominated eras. He switched teams, the way a chess grandmaster moves pieces Alfa Romeo, Ferrari, Maserati, Mercedes, and won with all of them. That is the argument. That is the foundation. Now, here's the other side. Fangio raced in an era where the grid was thin, where attrition, not competition, decided most championships, where mechanical failure took out rivals before they could push him. The fields he dominated were nothing like the 20-car, commercially saturated, globally televised sport that followed. He never faced 300 rivals on a modern qualifying sheet. He never had to fight through a midfield of drivers who were themselves elite athletes chasing the same data, the same simulator hours, the same marginal gains. He is the foundation of the argument. He is also the argument that is hardest to stress test because the era is simply too distant. Ayrton Senna, 3 world championships, 1988 to 1991. No driver in the history of the sport has inspired the way Senna inspired. The wet weather laps, the psychological warfare with Prost, the qualifying performances that his own engineers described as physically inexplicable. The onboard footage from Monaco 1984 in the rain, in a car he was told not to push, pushing it anyway and pulling away from everyone. 3 titles. The case is emotional, technical, and spiritual all at once, but 3 titles. When Senna drove in an era where McLaren and Ferrari were separated from the rest of the grid by a financial and engineering chasm. The car beneath him in his championship years was generationally dominant. The MP4/4 won 15 of 16 races in 1988. 15. That isn't Senna's achievement alone. That is Honda's engine, Gordon Murray's design, and a budget that dwarfed the competition. And then, there is the question of what happened when the car wasn't dominant. Senna didn't win in 1989, 1990, or 1991 with anything like the same margin. The genius was real. The 3 titles as a GOAT number. Genuinely debatable. Alain Prost, 4 world championships. 1985 to 1993. The Professor. The man who broke Fangio's championship record. The driver who understood, better than almost anyone before or after, that winning a championship is not the same thing as winning a race. Prost managed races. He calculated them. He finished second when finishing second was smarter than finishing first and destroying the car. He was clinical where Senna was electric, and his 4 titles across 9 seasons represent a consistency that the sport has rarely seen. Here's the problem. Prost's legacy lives in the long shadow of his rivalry with Senna. The historical narrative positions him as the antagonist, the one who drove Senna off the road at Suzuka, the one who had Senna banned, the one who won by manipulation as much as speed. Whether that framing is fair is genuinely contested, but the perception exists. And in a debate about greatness, perception matters. 4 titles. A GOAT case, built on longevity and intelligence. Undermined for many fans, and by the feeling that he was great but never transcendent. Michael Schumacher. 7 world championships. 1994 to 2004. 7. The number that ended the conversation for a decade. Schumacher didn't just win, he industrialized winning. He brought fitness culture to a sport that didn't have it. He brought telemetry obsession to a paddock that was still partly running on instinct. He built Ferrari's dominance in the 2000s, the way a general builds a military campaign systematically, relentlessly, over years. The 2000 to 2004 run of 5 consecutive championships is the most dominant stretch of driving in the sport's history by any measurable metric. Full stop. But here is where the case fractures. The 1994 championship. Adelaide. A collision with Damon Hill when Schumacher was about to lose the title. Was it a racing incident? Was it intentional? The stewards didn't decide. History hasn't decided. Schumacher got the title. Hill did not. 1997 Jerez. Same question, different victim. Jacques Villeneuve. This time, Schumacher was disqualified from the championship. The pattern was noted. And then there is the Ferrari era. Jean Todt, Ross Brawn, Rory Byrne. Bridgestone tires built specifically to Schumacher's driving style, in a period when tire supplier differentiation was a genuine performance variable. Take the technical ecosystem away, and what remains? Fernando Alonso. 2 world championships. 2005 to 2006. The most complete driver of his generation, and almost certainly the most underpaid by trophies. 2 titles at 24, a victory over a dominant Schumacher Ferrari in 2005 that remains one of the purest championship wins in the modern era, because Renault was good, but not untouchable, and Alonso extracted every single point the car could give. The 2012 season in a Ferrari that was objectively the 3rd or 4th fastest car on the grid, Alonso came within a handful of points of a title that the car had no right to contend for. That is the case. A driver so talented that he made bad cars competitive and great cars unbeatable. The counter is simple and brutal. 2 titles. 2. In an era where a driver of his caliber, who peaked for roughly a decade at the absolute front of the sport, should have 5 or 6 if the equipment had matched the ability. Either his team choices were wrong, his luck was catastrophic, or something about his temperament, the fallout with McLaren in 2007. The years at teams going nowhere cost him what the raw talent deserved. The GOAT case for Alonso is essentially a tragedy. He may be the greatest driver to win only 2 championships, which is both a profound compliment and the precise reason he's not undisputed. Lewis Hamilton, 7 world championships, 2008 to 2020, 7 titles. Schumacher's record equaled more wins than anyone in the history of the sport, more pole positions than anyone in the history of the sport, a longevity that stretches across 4 distinct eras of regulation change, meaning Hamilton adapted and survived where others peaked and faded. The 2017 and 2018 seasons, when Ferrari had a competitive car, when Vettel was genuinely in the fight, produced some of the most complete driving of the hybrid era. Hamilton didn't just survive those challenges, he suffocated them. Now the counter, Mercedes. Between 2014 and 2021, the W Series cars were the most dominant machinery the sport had seen since the Schumacher-Ferrari years. 6 of Hamilton's 7 titles came in that window. The power unit advantage was, in some seasons, measured in tenths per lap, an abyss between Mercedes and the grid. 2021 provided the clearest window onto Hamilton without the dominant car advantage, a season where Red Bull matched Mercedes race by race, and a finale in Abu Dhabi that ended in circumstances so contested that the race director lost his position. Hamilton in the equal or slower car. The question Formula One never quite answered cleanly. 7 titles. And the numbers say, GOAT. The car says the conversation isn't finished.